Acabo de començar, si us podeu estar al voltant del faristol. Sí, sí, però ho he dit provant.
In the mindset also, or in the mindset of the Turkish government of Recep Tayyip Erdogan, of the AKP, his party. There is also another important concept, which is the Horizon 2023. The idea that there are things to be accomplished from now to the year 2023. It's a very important symbolic date because it commemorates the 100th anniversary of the Turkish Republic. So somehow this is linked. I mean, this new Turkey is building the Turkey of Turkey 2023. So having said that, what I will try to do is not to try to depict how Turkish will look like in 2023, but rather what has changed in the last years in different areas in Turkish political dynamics, in the society, as well as in the relation between Turkey and the rest of the world. So my understanding of the new Turkey is not that much Erdogan's concept of the new Turkey, but how nowadays Turkey looks like compared to some years ago. So the first thing, and Quique was mentioning it, is that we've had, and I don't know if an unprecedented, but in any case, it was not expected in that scale, movement of social and political protest mushrooming in Turkey since last year. And the Gezi events catch the attraction of people worldwide and show to the world a different face of Turkey. Turkey seemed a rising star, a fast-growing economy, in which also Islam and democracy were compatible, in which the wealth of the population had doubled in the last decade. But then, I mean, which had a much more open political system than the neighbors around. But we saw in 2013 that a significant part, I don't know if a minority, a very vocal minority, or a silenced majority of the Turkish public opinion was not satisfied with the state of affairs. And this is what brought very different kinds of people with very different demands to the streets of not only of Istanbul, of many Turkish cities, although the focus obviously it was put in Istanbul and in Taksim Square. And in those kinds of protests, what you saw is a wide range of people. I mean, from Islamists to strong laicist supporters of the laicity, leftist, gay activists. So a very different and somehow disconnected group of people which had something in common, which were that the fear that their lifestyle was in danger, that the state was intervening too much in their daily lives, and a lack of trust in the government. Not to say that Turkey is a dictatorship, which is not true, and I mean everyone could refute. I mean could prove that such a statement is wrong, but that there were some authoritarian trends, authoritarian tics, that the needs and the fears of those that disagree, perhaps with the majority, were not sufficiently heard and taken into account. So, I mean, there were people that demonstrated just because they were against the brutality of the police, some because they were against the social and economic model of this new Turkey, which prefers to build malls than having parks. the gay activists, which also may feel also afraid for their of how they want to live their lives, and also, and it was interesting, also some very pious Muslims which disagreed with the attitudes of the current Turkish government. So that's something new. I mean, this diversity of movements coming together into a single protest wave. Then one of the novelties also in this Turkey is that we've seen, compared to the past, so I mean, we have someone that has been in coma for 4 years, now wakes up, looks the press and doesn't understand anything. If he or she was used to read Zaman or a newspaper closer which were closer to the AKP, now you can see if I was in coma as well, conservative papers, and now they see they have become strong, activists against the Turkish government. So now what we find is a rupture in one among the group of people that have traditionally given support to Erdogan's political party and Erdogan's political vision. There has been a divorce between Erdogan and his party on the one hand, and a movement called the Hizmet movement, the Fethullah Gulen movement, who has a charismatic leader in Pennsylvania, Fethullah Gulen, who is, with a strong influence in the education and in many liberal professions in Turkey, and who for a long time has been supporting the policies of the AKP, and the AKP has been relying also on this basis. Now we have a divorce because the government thinks, and there may be some elements of truth, that these individuals and this group has been using their positions in the state system to complot against the Turkish government. And I always say, and I wrote it so it's not secret, that I think that in the current situation, both are right. So on the one hand, I think that the movement has been using this privileged position to complot against the government, and at the same time, it's probably true that many of people in the government, or at least some important people in the party, have been involved in nasty corruption scandals. And this is no surprise for us. I mean, we have them every day. I mean, a party that has been in power for more than 11 years now, in a country whose economy has been booming, with a booming real estate sector. I mean, no surprise for us is what in Spanish we say, blanco y en botella. This comes quite naturally. So probably both elements are true. But this is something new, this split between the AKP on the one hand and this movement of the Hizmet, and this is a central element in Turkish politics today. Yet, what we have seen, despite the Gezi protests and the split between the Hizmet movement and the AKP, is that the Turkish voters have renovated their trust to the AKP and to Erdogan himself. So there were very important municipal local elections in March this year. There were some irregularities, but in any case, I mean, the whole picture is that the AKP got strong support. And then this was even clearer in the presidential elections in August, in which there were a lower participation than expected, a lower turnout, probably because people already thought that Erdogan was going to win, and some of those who could have voted for him did not like the candidate of the opposition. But here we had Erdogan winning the elections from the very beginning. He didn't go to go for the second round. So what we have is that despite these protest movements and despite the split in the social basis of the AKP remains popular, and the Turkish voters have asked Erdogan to lead the country from now to 2023. We'll see. The fourth important element I wanted to highlight is that these dynamics are taking place in a more turbulent and unpredictable regional context. No surprise. I mean, now, I mean, Turkey is surrounded by many crisis zones. Syria and Iraq, mainly, and then protracted conflicts in Cyprus. Now the conversations have collapsed also for the reunification of Cyprus. The border with Armenia is still closed. There has been also some recent tension between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So, I mean, it's not the most friendly environment for Turkey, and it's an environment which is deteriorating every day. So, this situation in which we have a 3 years war in Syria with almost 200,000 casualties, more than 2 million refugees, approximately 1 million of them in Turkey, and this is growing. I mean, there are some figures that say that this is even higher. 6 million internal displaced people. So this is also creating stress in Turkish foreign policy. Turkish foreign policy during the first years of the AKP, there was this motto of achieving zero problems with neighbors. Now we are in a situation in which probably there is no neighbor without problems. And this is not only the responsibility, or not mainly the responsibility of the Turkish government, it's mainly the changes that have happened in the region. Now, for instance, the relations between Egypt and Turkey are at the lowest point ever. That's because there has been the coup d'etat in Egypt, and Turkey has vehemently opposed to that coup. Is not because of the, you could say, okay, Turkey should have accepted the coup. That's something else. But in any case, it's not only the responsibility of Turkey, it's because the region is changing, that Turkey is not able to continue with this policy of friendly relations with everyone. One of the effects of turmoil in the Middle East is the economy. In the context of the global economic crisis in 2008, Turkey moved quickly to diversify its markets very successfully, and that's also why it was more resilient to the global crisis than other countries. I mean, the increase amazingly trade and investment with countries from the Gulf and from the Middle East. Countries like the Emirates, Iraq, Syria became crucial for Turkish economy, and now, obviously, in some cases because of the crisis, the conflict in these regions, in other cases because of the new enmities between the Turkish government and some of these countries, there is a risk of economic deterioration for Turkey, but still Turkey is resisting much better than others. The problem is if we are moving towards a third recession, as many people are saying, will Turkey resist as well, or now it's in a more vulnerable situation with the world as a whole moves towards a third recession? The other element, and my colleague will focus on that, is an increase of tensions in the streets. So tension in the Middle East is being replicated in the streets in Turkey. Kobani has been the turning point, and one of the most important changes in Turkey and promising evolutions in Turkey, which was the negotiation with the PKK and achieving a long-lasting peace with the Kurds, may be in danger. That's one of the elements that we'll have to see. And finally, and that's also to say something that Laura also perhaps could build upon, the relations with Europe. So it's not only this turbulent Middle East, we have also a European Union which is not in very good shape. I don't know, Laura, if you will agree with me, but I think that still neither Turkey nor the EU has an interest in a train clash. I think both of them prefer status quo to the collapse of the negotiations, to a full-fledged divorce in this case. And I think that despite or because of this complicated picture I was depicting, there may be a small window of opportunity to re-engage Turkey. And I'm always trying to be optimistic, I know Laura as well, but I don't know what effects could have also this Kobane situation. And also, I mean, if you look at the polls in Turkey, Turks seem to be more favorable to both the EU and NATO now than 2 or 3 years ago, less self-confident in their own country and in the possibility of acting alone in the international system. Luckily, we haven't heard any Turkophobic speeches in Europe in the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, you don't have a Sarkozy or Merkel repeating the kind of speeches they were using before. And on top of it, there was the vote in the UN General Assembly, in which probably also Turkey felt more isolated than ever. Probably because they will say because we had a principled foreign policy. Anyway, I think that Turkey is in need of friends. And also, as Laura was for the friends of Turkey in the European Parliament, perhaps it also in this new Turkey may need to be re-engaged or may be willing to be re-engaged. That's a question mark, because also, I mean, Europe bashing also is a classical tool also in Turkish politics.
So I will today underline another paradox of the new Turkey. And my main question will be this one. Is it possible to search for peace while there is a rising authoritarian regime? Or we can put the question in another way. Is the AKP searching for peace, a permanent peace, or are they searching a new Turkey, and peace process is just a part of it? I will try to summarize the Kurdish opening in the framework of New Turkey, but before I begin, I must say that Kurdish nationalism and political Islam have been considered the two major threats against the Turkish Republic since its establishment. While the former, Kurdish nationalism, has been perceived as a security threat to the national unity, the latter, I mean the political Islam, has been regarded as a threat to the secular order of the Turkish Republic. Ironically, since 2002, for 15 years, these two others of the ex-Turkish Republic, or the ex-official discourse, had begun to confront each other under the circumstances of the Turkey's transformation. The AKP came to power in November 2002 and has become the first single party government in almost 2 decades, and it still is. For the first time in its history, in the Turkish history, or the Republic's history, not the military, but a political party has begun to play a key role in the transformation of Turkey. I think it's very significant for the history of the Turkish Republic. The AKP has become the major actor in this transformation, along with the global transformation of the nation state. The AKP government has not devised a detailed policy or announced a roadmap for the Kurdish question, except for declarations of intent to solve the problem until 2009. In 2009, until 2009, its policy on the Kurdish issue was based on 2 pillars. On the one hand, there was a European Union conditionality. On the other hand, the Muslim Brotherhood. But when I mention the Muslim Brotherhood, I don't refer to the organization of the Muslim Brotherhood. I refer to the Muslim solidarity. Yesterday, I also mentioned I use the Brotherhood because it's also a part of the definition of the nation in terms of AKP. They generally underline that brotherhood concept in defining the nation. Because of that, I prefer to use the Muslim Brotherhood, but keep in mind that it's not the organization, but just the Muslim solidarity between the brothers. First, the European Union conditionality, since before the AKP, I mean since 1999, major improvements in legislation concerning minority rights, human rights have been made as part of the European Union integration process. And this has continued during the first term of the AKP government. However, we may easily say that the European Union membership is not the first consideration of the AKP government since 2004, and it has a mutual dimension, but I may easily say that the European dream is not the dream of the new Turkey anymore, or is not a part of the new Turkey definition of the AKP government. So yes, until the 2004, they keep ongoing the European Union conditionality, but since 2004, there is no step forward. We should keep this in mind. If we turn back to the definition of the Muslim Brotherhood, before coming to power, especially during the propaganda process of the general elections in 2002, AKP stressed its opposition to the Kemalist ideology, which has been symbolized by the military in the Kurdish regions. AKP tactically chose to underline the fact that both Islamists and Kurds suffered under Kemalist rule, and it represented itself as a party which is sensitive to the Kurdish problem. And in a clever move, it has especially targeted the religious Kurds who find common ground with conservative Sunni Turks within the AKP. Its success in the region in the 2002 elections empowered the AKP to maintain its Muslim solidarity discourse, which reminds of the millet system in the Ottoman state. And AKP began to highlight the Muslim Brotherhood concept in the region as an antidote against the Kurdish nationalism. They also do it for the Kemalist Turkish nationalism. They also see Islam a kind of an antidote against Kemalist nationalism. Increasing charitable activities in the Kurdish regions, especially food or sometimes money aid for the poor, and opening religious schools, Gülen schools, in the region have become the symbols of this policy. However, after 2004, after the PKK ended the ceasefire and increased its attacks in 2005, the policy of negligence came to an end under these conditions, and the AKP government pursued a two-tier policy. On the one hand, the government asked for the help of the US to stop the PKK activities in Iraq, in northern Iraq, or you may say southern Kurdistan. On the other hand, Prime Minister Erdogan had begun to use a pro-Kurdish language to weaken the influence of the PKK within the Kurdish society. We have to acknowledge that he was the first prime minister who defined the Kurdish question as his own problem. So it was a positive step for the Kurdish society. Also, he was the first Turkish prime minister to announce that the Kurdish problem and PKK terrorism were two different things, and to name Kurdish identity as a sub-identity by defining citizenship in the Turkish Republic as a super-identity. But there is always irony in his discourse, and while on the one hand he is defining a new kind of citizenship in Turkish Republic, on the other hand he also continued to state that the Muslimhood was the common identity of all the ethnic groups in Turkey, obviously excluding non-Muslims of Turkey. He did not hesitate to mention the motto of one state, one nation, and one flag frequently. So on July 2009, Interior Minister declared that the government would initiate a new policy for solving the Kurdish problem through more freedom and more democracy. He did not provide any details, but this announcement signified another phase in the Kurdish question in the history of the Turkish Republic. But the first question that this move had generated in the public opinion was, why now? Why, after 7 years in power, why has AKP officially pronounced a Kurdish opening? I believe the answer to this question could be analyzed in some levels. First, I will start with the global dynamics. When we consider the neoliberal turn in capitalist world economy, which began at the end of the 1970s, we know that it has not been only a recipe for the economic crisis, but also a political path which genuinely transformed the traditional meaning of the nation state and the sovereignty, especially in Europe. In this context, the nation state has been reorganized on territorial and functional levels, and its transformation has deeply influenced the majority-minority relations. In this regard, Turkey is not an exception, and it completed its integration to the neoliberal order under the rule of the AKP government. Therefore, and because of that, it can then be argued that the global context has prepared the groundwork for launching and opening a democratization process by transforming both parties of the Kurdish conflict. On the one hand, it has urged Turkey to transform its strictly regulated norms, and on the other hand, by a promise of a devolution, it has moderated the demands of Kurdish nationalism. When we consider the regional dynamics in 2009, we may say that the stability of Iraq was the main motivation. The main motivation of the US before the withdrawal in 2010, main motivation of the Turkey, and the main motivation of the Kurdistan regional government in Iraq. Because Washington has supported the improving relations between Turkey and the Kurdistan region in Iraq, and the northern Iraq has begun to represent a strategic opportunity for Turkey to bolster its regional power aspirations. Therefore, it was not surprising that Turkey developed a new policy, the Kurdish opening, which will carry on stability in the region. As a regional dynamic, we should also mention about the neo-Ottomanist foreign policy of Turkey under the rule of the AKP government, because if you consider the situation, they had, I don't know if they still have, but they had a kind of a Pax Ottoman vision. And if you had a kind of a vision like that, first you should keep the peace in your own borders. In other words, without finding a solution to the Kurdish question, the government's ambitious policy of pursuing a zero problem with neighbors and its latent neo-Ottomanism will not be convincing and will be difficult to achieve. In this sense, the opening in 2009 was initiated by the government under the exceptional intersection of the global and regional dynamics. However, three events drove the final nails to the coffin in this atmosphere. The first one was the Habur incidents. On October 2009, the PKK sent a small group across the Iraqi border according to the return home policy that had been acknowledged by the government as part of the opening process. It was a kind of a shock for the government because thousands of Kurds welcomed them, greeted them as heroes, and the reaction of the Turkish public opinion towards these televised celebrations was tough. It was acknowledged as an affirmation of the PKK by the government and provoked Turkish nationalist outrage against the opening. The second event was the ban of the pro-Kurdish party, Democratic Society Party, by the Constitutional Court in December 2009, just a few months after the announcement of the Kurdish opening. Although the government is not accountable for the ruling of the Constitutional Court, it nevertheless remained silent after the closure decision of the pro-Kurdish party. And the third was the operations against the Kurdish politicians. There is an umbrella organization, we call it in short KCK or KJK. Under that umbrella, they have military organizations, they have political organizations, they have ideological organizations. For example, PKK is an organization under the KJK, and also the PYD in Syria is also part of the KJK. And a few months after the declaration of an opening, KJK operations has begun. The second wave was just after the closure of the pro-Kurdish party. Elected mayors and other representatives of Kurdish politics rounded up in a police operation. Along with 19 elected mayors, nearly 1,000 politicians were held in custody. It was like a confirmation of the suspicions of the Kurdish political movement. Under the rhetoric of the opening, the AKP, the government, was seeking to eradicate the rival political force among the Kurdish population, and they did it openly. I mean, they called the opponents, they called the PKK line as the bad Kurds, and they called the pro-AKP Kurds as good Kurds. They openly declared that. Within the opening, failing to produce anything concrete for Kurds, in the spring of 2010, the PKK ended the ceasefire, and between 2010 and 2013, a long halt occurred, and the cycle of violence escalated once more. The event that broke this halt in 2013 was the hunger strike of the Kurdish prisoners in September 2012. Between July 2011 and to November 2013, long than a year, the government kept Öcalan, the leader of the PKK, who is in prison in an island in Turkey, İmralı Island, kept Öcalan in isolation. He could not meet neither family members nor his lawyers for a year. On September 2012, around 60 Kurdish prisoners being held in Turkish prisons began a hunger strike, and in a short notice, the number reached 700 in a short time. They demanded two things. One was the Kurdish language rights in education and in court, and the second one was to end the solidarity confinement of the PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan. On the 68th day of the hunger strike, Öcalan called for it to end, and it was over. It was a non-violent protest that displays the significance of Öcalan in many ways. On the one hand, it broke the isolation of Öcalan because the government used Öcalan to calm down the Kurdish unrest. And on the other hand, Öcalan once more displayed how important he is for the Kurdish movement and how the government required him in crisis. So I will repeat again, it was the first, after the 2013, or we may say at the end of 2012, it was the first time that the government used Öcalan to calm down the Kurdish unrest. Therefore, breaking up the isolation, the second phase of the opening had begun in 2012, and the government announced that a new dialogue with Öcalan has begun. It's very significant because if you compare with the IRA or ETA, you will see that it's an authentic style of the Turkish government that they choose to negotiate with the leader of the PKK. So it's a positive step, I think, but maybe the only positive side of it we can discuss later. So they publicly acknowledged the negotiation with him, and the reaction was not tough as expected. However, this time they exclude the political party, the Kurdish political party, and they just act them as a messenger between the Kurdish people and the PKK cadres in Kandil in Iraq. On March 21, 2013, it is a national day for Kurds. Öcalan called the PKK to withdraw from Turkey and announced a ceasefire. It still continues, a ceasefire while he negotiated with the AKP. Recently, the second term is on its way, but there are so many different dynamics if we compare with the first term, which began in 2009, and there is still so many unknowns about the roadmap. If we consider the regional dynamics of the second term, we will notice that there are deep differences. First of all, not the stability, but the chaos is the term to define the Middle East since 4 years. If we should summarize the condition in the region, we may begin with the effects of the Arab Spring, the Syrian civil war, the autonomous region of Syrian Kurds in Rojava, including Kobani, rising secessionist demands in the Kurdish region of Iraq, the Islamic State, ISIS threat, it's a really new actor for all of us in the Middle East, and the failure of the AKP's zero-problem policy in the region. The growing sense of unity among the Kurds in the region, Peshmerga, PKK, and PYD in Syria, against the ISIS threat is a significant turning point for Kurdish politics. It surpasses their internal divisions, and the autonomy experienced by the Kurds in Syria and the Kurds in Iraq has a deep impact on Kurds in Turkey. So they all related each other very deeply. It's probably the most convenient period for Kurds to construct a national vision. On the other hand, there is a negotiation continues for 2 years, with Öcalan, but there are no serious steps towards the peace. There is growing distrust towards the government among the Kurds, and the last developments in Kobani increased this distrust. The Kurds in Turkey requested from the government to establish a passage to the Kobani to send humanitarian aid and to let volunteers to enter Kobani for fight, because they know and they witnessed that the AKP government let some Islamists from its borders to Syria for fight, and they just wanted that just this time let us to fight for our brothers in Kobane, but the government did not let. However, as the government resisted against this demand, many leading figures of the AKP declared that they did help by accepting Kurdish refugees from Rojava, and Kurds should be thankful. This thankfulness is also another problem for the Kurdish society. Erdogan announced that he sees PKK and ISIS as equals. It was the fire that started, or not the fire, it was the match of that fire in the Kobane protests. And this rhetoric increased the anger, and there were huge demonstrations in the regions. And if you consider the pressure on media in Turkey, we only saw one dimension of that protest, and it was a huge protest. 48 people died, and it's significant that few with police bullet, but mainly two groups killed each other, PKK and Hezbollah. It's a kind of it reminds to public opinion in Turkey the 1990s. Secular Kurds against the Islamist Kurds. 48 people, nearly 40 of them killed each other. And the government let this happen. It's very significant, and we should really consider this issue. In this atmosphere, it was the second time that the government used Öcalan again. Just last week, Öcalan called all parties to calm down and maintain the process, but he also warned the government that he won't let them to instrumentalize him anymore. He is aware of his position. He is still so powerful among the Kurds and acknowledged as a leader for the PKK and the PYD in Syria. However, we should add that there is a growing anger among the Kurdish youth against the AKP, and I'm not sure how long Öcalan could cope with this anger if this delaying tactics of the government continues. For conclusion, the Kurdish opening by the AKP government has been one of the most controversial and risky and significant initiatives, and it should be welcomed, but by holding back doubts and criticism. Most of these critics and doubts are directed toward rising authoritarianism and the concept of a new Turkey. In its third term in government after the 2012, Recep Tayyip Erdogan called this third term as the mastery period. And the AKP intensified its efforts in rebuilding a new state and, if you ask me, a new nation, differing from the Kemalist establishment. It's clear that a solution to the century-long problem, such as the Kurdish issue, would boost this new mission that the AKP has undertaken and provide for it a new ground for its legitimacy. The paradox is that is it possible for a government to become more authoritarian and seek a solution to an existing issue? This is important because the Kurdish issue has been attributed to the oppressive character of the government so far. Therefore, this paradox between authoritarianism and peace is substantial to comprehend the new Turkey that both President Erdogan and the AKP government declared their commitment to build. I argue that the AKP government is trying to place the opening in the framework of the New Turkey project, defining Kurds as part of the new nation, which bases on Islam solidarity. The New Turkey has a new definition for its national identity in which religion has been considered as its core. In this sort of religious nationalism that the AKP introduces, religion, Sunni Islam, not Islam but Sunni Islam, does not necessarily define the boundaries of the nation, but it supplies myths, metaphors, and symbols that are central to the discursive or iconic representation of the nation. We see it in the education system, we see it on the media, on TV shows, and in the process of Kurdish opening. It's no surprise to see that the discourse of the AKP government during the opening is not based on human and minority rights in the context of Europeanization process, but it is based on Muslim unity. The AKP maintains its Muslim solidarity discourse towards the Kurds since it came to power, and it has specifically intensified its emphasis in the second term of the opening, which coincides with its mastery period. They negotiate with Öcalan. Yes, it's okay, and I think it's a positive step. However, do not relinquish the concept of religious brotherhood during this process. Therefore, recently there are two parties at the negotiation table, but one of them, the government, the AKP, also defines the identity of the other party, the Kurds, in Islamic terms, while the Kurdish movement defines itself in secular terms and has secular demands like education in mother tongue, like autonomy. They are secular demands. Additionally, if we consider the situation in the Middle East, the Kurds in the region, the Kurds in the Middle East are powerful more than before, and they are seen as the secular, stable dynamic of the region by the leading powers of the world order. So we should also consider this situation when we are handling the Kurdish opening in the context of the new Turkey and in the context of I think, the new Middle East.
But first of all, I would like to note that all the opinions that will be expressed today are my own opinions, and I do not represent the opinions of the European Parliament in my presentation. Well, being this said, I would like to speak about the relations of Turkey with the EU, which have been lasting now for over 50 years. Actually, the Turkish accession process to the EU is the longest and most controversial process of any country to the European Union. Last year, for example, it marked the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Ankara Agreement, which set the basis of Turkey's economic, political, and institutional relations with the then European Economic Community. Although not a part of the EU yet, Turkey is a member of many other European organizations such as the Council of Europe, the OECD and OSCE, and as well is a NATO member since 1952, and it has the second largest army after the US in this organization. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, which is the founder of the Turkish Republic, was the instigator of the Western-inspired reforms in the country. He, for example, abolished the Arabic alphabet with the Latin. He proclaimed the secular state and granted voting rights to women. For Turkey, still, the EU accession process remains the most important modernization project to date. Turkey applied for EU membership back in 1987, and only 18 years later, back in 2005, the European Council decided to start negotiations with Turkey. As it was previously said by my colleagues during the early years of the Justice and Development Party, the AKP, this political party promoted internal reforms in the country, which actually brought in accordance with the EU acquis and made Turkey more democratic. But unfortunately, in recent years, the Turkish government has gradually abandoned its commitment to the EU. In a way, this can be explained because after having achieved a political dominance in the country, there is indeed little incentive for the AKP to continue with EU-driven reforms. To continue with this reform process would mean for the government, for example, to reduce the 10% threshold, election threshold, which is one of the highest one in Europe, as well as securing, for example, independence of the judiciary or press freedom. At the same time, though, it's not only Turkey to blame for it. EU-Turkey relations have been in a deadlock for over a considerably long time. After the enlargement waves in 2004 and 2007, in which 12 new countries joined the EU, some voices argued that it would be difficult to bring new members on board since the EU family was already very big. Also, the economic crisis has contributed to that because now it has notably aggravated enlargement fatigue. Actually, for the time being, enlargement is no longer in the list of EU priorities, and the new European Commission President, Jean-Claude Juncker, has made sufficiently clear that no further enlargement will take place in the coming 5 years. As regards to Turkey, he himself, Juncker, has said that a government that blocks Turkey is certainly not ready for EU accession. For these reasons, Turkey has also become increasingly frustrated over the process, and because it feels that the European Union is not committed enough to move forward the process. Since the beginning of membership talks, there are in 2005, only 14 chapters out of 35 have been opened, and there's only one which is merely closed. 6 chapters are blocked politically by Cyprus due to the ongoing dispute between Greek and Turkish Cypriots, and 4 other chapters are blocked by France. Moreover, in 2006, the European Council decided to block 8 chapters due to Turkey's failure to fulfill its obligation of implementing the Ankara Agreement to all member states, because Turkey does not recognize the Republic of Cyprus as well as its government. Actually, when the Cyprus EU presidency took place on the second half of 2012, it was a very tense moment for EU-Turkey relations, because Turkey decided to refrain from any meeting or contact with the Cypriot presidency of the EU. In light of these events, the European Commission decided to adopt a new positive agenda with Turkey, which aside from the accession process and the opening of chapters, would help move the talks by cooperating in areas of key interest. Despite the limited success of this positive agenda, the best way to ensure that EU remains the benchmark for reforms in Turkey is by opening these political chapters. Actually, last November in 2013, Turkey managed to open a new chapter in the negotiations. It was Chapter 22 on regional policy, and it was possible thanks to France lifting its veto on it. But before that, there were 3 years in which no chapter was opened between the EU and Turkey. At the beginning of this year, Erdogan declared that 2014 would be the year of the European Union in Turkey. Unfortunately, in the past months, we have only seen Turkey increasingly moving away from EU norms and standards. As it was explained before, the Gezi Park protest, the way in which the government responded to those protests was seen by some EU member states as a reason to stop negotiations with Turkey. The European Parliament harshly condemned police violence against protesters and recalled that freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, which also includes social media, and freedom of press are fundamental values of the EU. The EU has also showed concerns over the response of the Turkish government following allegations of corruption last December, and recently adopted legislation, for example, in the case of the law on the internet or the law on the Turkish intelligence service, have also casted serious doubts over the independence of the judiciary and the separation of powers. Freedom of expression has also generally been at risk following attempts to ban Twitter and YouTube, and there have been several pressures on press which have led to self-censorship, not only from journalists, but also from media owners. But in light of all of this, the European Commission, the EU, has repeatedly stressed the importance for the EU to enhance its engagement with Turkey on rule of law issues. Actually, there are 2 chapters which are really, really important for the future of EU-Turkey relations, which are chapters 23 on judiciary and fundamental rights and 24 on justice, freedom and security, which could help Turkey in a way to reform itself and comply with the rule of law requirements. However, these 2 chapters are currently blocked by Cyprus. And despite this year, we saw some hopes to find a comprehensive settlement to the Cyprus issue, which this talk started early this year in February. The prospect of finding a solution right now looks very unlikely, since Turkey sent last week a seismic data ship that entered supposedly the Cyprus exclusive economic zone. So as a result of this action, peace talks between Greek and Turkish Cypriots have been suspended. And even worse, the Cypriot government has called the EU to refrain from, to not continue with talks with Turkey, and has threatened to block any opening of any chapter with Turkey. At this point, one thing is clear in EU-Turkey relations. Until there is no move to find a solution with the Cyprus issue, there will be no advancement in EU-Turkey relations. As Turkey's membership largely depends on solving this issue, it's expected that the Turkish government makes a greater effort to find a solution, because resolving this conflict, which is no longer no longer a dispute between Greece, Cyprus, and Turkey, but it became an EU problem since Cyprus entered the EU back in 2004, could lead as well to benefit from the exploitation of oil and gas resources that have been recently found in the Eastern Mediterranean Sea, which could also benefit the EU to not solely depend on Russian energy. But despite the gloomy weather, some positive signs have been emerging in the last year. Last December, for example, the European Commission launched a visa liberalization dialogue with Turkey. Turkey is the only candidate country which is required to apply for a visa when entering the EU. Actually, this is not the case for other non-candidate countries like Ukraine or Moldova, who are currently negotiating the removal of the visa regime with the EU. Turkey feels very discriminated in this regard over the visa issue, and in a way that's why support for EU membership has been declining in recent years. But last week the Commission presented the first report on the progress made by Turkey on fulfilling the requirements set in the visa roadmap. And surprisingly, this report stressed that Turkey is heading in the right direction. So hopefully the roadmap doesn't establish a clear deadline to accomplish this visa liberalization, but hopefully it will be in 2-3 years' time. Turkey will be able to travel freely the Turkish citizens will be able to travel freely to the EU. As I was saying, Turkish citizens are increasingly frustrated with the EU, but for the first time in many, many years, a majority of Turks, Eduard was mentioning it before, are clearly in favor of EU membership. At the same time, the Turkish government has taken some steps to improve Turkey's image in the EU, has adopted a new communication strategy, and as well a new European strategy, which intends to reinvigorate the process with the EU. As well, we have new figures on the line, and we have a new EU Minister and Chief Negotiator, Volkan Bozkır. He has a different approach to the EU than his predecessor, Egemen Bağış, who actually was caught in these corruption scandals last December. And he has brought a very positive change in rhetoric from the Turkish government on the relations with the EU. So this is, in Brussels' spheres, it's taken as a very good step. Last but not least, the EU has also welcomed the emergence of a dynamic and diverse civil society in Turkey that embraces democracy and freedoms for all. Actually, now it has become imperative that Turkey seriously addresses the shortcomings regarding the rule of law and fundamental rights. That's why it's so important that Turkey concentrates its efforts now to write a new modern civilian and participatory constitution which guarantees the fundamental rights and freedoms for all citizens. Equally, as it was mentioned before as well, renewed impetus to find a peaceful settlement to the Kurdish issue is also detrimental. So we shouldn't forget that the European Union reforms have made Turkey more democratic, stable, and prosperous. In this regard, as the accession process should remain the only anchor for Turkey's economic and political reforms, and should not be replaced by any other form of association like some member states have been claiming. But while the accession process is in a deadlock, like right now, cooperation with Turkey and the EU can still go on other crucial areas of key interest for both of them. One of these areas is the customs union, which is one of the main achievements of the Ankara Agreement. Actually, this customs union needs to be updated and enlarged, as the World Bank report suggested recently. There should also be strengthened political dialogue on foreign policy issues, in particularly in Syria and Iraq, and improving counter-terrorism cooperation and devising new modalities of humanitarian aid with regard to the Syrian refugee crisis is also crucial for Turkey and the EU. And lastly, energy is another key topic of interest for EU-Turkey relations, as I was mentioning before, because it could help the EU to diversify its energy demand and not solely depend from Russia. So to conclude, as I have been repeating in my presentation, the most suitable framework for exploiting the full potential of EU-Turkey relations should be, without a doubt, an active and credible accession process. However, right now, if Turkey is eager to give a new momentum to EU-Turkey relations, Turkey needs to show first its willingness and credibility in respecting all the standards and values and norms from the EU.
I believe that Öcalan must be the main negotiator. But on the other hand, we should also, and I think the Kurdish political movement also consider this, and many other groups in Turkey, political groups in Turkey, but not the government, we should have a peace process which bases on some clear roadmap, some clear legal steps, and we should see our 1 month later, okay? Because today there is a kind of a, I don't know, it's in English, probably it's from English, cacophony. It's a kind of a cacophony now, okay? Öcalan is staying there as the main actor. There are a group of pro-Kurdish parties members, MPs, who are visiting Öcalan and taking a letter from him and announcing the letter to the Kandil, to PKK and to Kurdish society. They have some declarations after every visit. For example, last week they mentioned that in a month, a kind of a secretary for Öcalan will be established, and they will study for the process, and there will be some commissions on different issues for the process. These commissions are on a legal base, by the way. They just did the legal arrangements last month. But today, just this morning, I read that a really significant leading figure of the AKP government just rejected the secretary and said that, who is saying this? What secretary for Öcalan? Okay? This is the cacophony. I mean, one day they use Öcalan to calm down, and just in the morning they say that Öcalan is the responsible one for the Kobani protest. It's a kind of process that we are in. I'm criticizing it because it should not be like this. I mean, we should know the next steps openly. It's delaying tactics is not going anymore. And the Kurdish political, not only the Kurdish political movement, but the Kurdish people in the region are aware of this. Kobani protests symbolize this awareness. Because, you know, I was at a conference last weekend, just listened some Kurdish figures, and they mentioned that this time the people on the street were not only just the political, were not just the people who have political awareness. After the Erdogan declared that ISIS is equal to PKK, many of the ordinary people just went on the streets to protest. Okay, they are losing the trust of the Kurdish people in the process, so it's very significant. I believe Öcalan must be the main people in the negotiation table, main actor in the negotiation table, but we should also discuss, first we should discuss what kind of a negotiation table is it.
No. I mean, I think it's only part of the picture. I mean, what I was trying to insist is that the people that went into the streets in Gezi were very diverse. So you may have some people which feel challenged in their role as the primary elites of the Turkish establishment. They are in discomfort with the emerging of alternative elites. That's part of those that demonstrated. But there were also people from disfranchised elements of the society, people that have been marginalized by the Kemalists and by the AKP. So the thinking that the Gezi protests were a product of the secularist elite, and that it was the secular middle class that went to demonstrate, it's only part of the picture, not the whole picture.
I will have, in a way, to disagree with Mr. Pamuk. I think, on one hand, it's true that, as I was mentioning, that now the European Union has to cope with 28 member states. They are really different from each other, so it's still digesting these new waves of enlargement. But at the same time, I think when it comes, it's not a matter of diversity. The main motto of the European Union is united in diversity, so I think that's the cultural richness of the Union. But for Turkey, the main problem would be it would become the second largest country in the EU. It has a population of around 70-something million people, so it would, in a way, the balance of power in the EU would change a lot, so that's one of the main fears. But for me, my personal opinion is that for the moment, Turkey is not ready to join, so if it really doesn't do its homework for Turkey, it cannot enter the EU. It's also politically blocked, its accession, so many things would need to change, starting from the Cyprus issue to France has also is also blocking many political chapters. So in that sense, there's no progress. Germany, for example, is not blocking any chapter, but it's not doing it because France is doing it for Germany. So in a way, it's difficult to say, to point out what's the main reason why Turkey could not become an EU member. In any case, it will take a long time, if ever. I don't know if that will ever happen, but it won't be in any time soon because of the reasons I was mentioning. And with regard to the multi-speed EU, there are very interesting papers on this. Actually, we still don't know where the EU is heading, in a way. Will it become a federal, fully federal union, or will it be a multi-speed union, or a la carte, where member states can choose in which policies do they want to take part or not? Like the UK, in a way, there are several EU member states which have opted out from some policies, like Denmark, like the UK. They don't participate in all the European Union policies. And for Turkey, for example, now that they quit, there are several political families at the EU level. Normally, Turkey was in the European People's Party, which is the largest force in the European Parliament, but it recently quit this family and joined the European Conservatives and Reformists, where the Tories, the British Tories, sit. And actually, this move is quite interesting to see where Turkey sees itself within the EU, because that means that if it has allied now with the British Tories, is that they are not supporting a fully fledged federal European Union, but they would also like to opt out from several policies. For example, I don't know whether they would be ready to join the euro, or they would like to stay outside the euro, or if they are ready to give all their sovereignty to the European Union, or to still retain some competencies. So this multi-speed Europe maybe could, there are some people who are arguing that could be a solution to integrate Turkey only in those policy fields that can be suitable for Turkey, but at the same time, obviously, it has to respect European Union fundamental norms and standards.
Said. I mean, it's true that in order to explain the reluctance of many Europeans to accept Turkey potentially, if it was ready to join the EU, there is this classical idea of Turkey being too poor, too big, too different. And it's the addition of the three elements, and not only one of them, that makes it more difficult. I mean, a small, poor, but still different country, it has more possibilities to join. I'm thinking Albania. A small, poor, but not that different, a big, poor, but not that different kind, like Ukraine to some extent. Perhaps it's more likely to join than Turkey as the situation looks now. So that's the combination of the three elements, which doesn't mean that it's impossible. I mean, what Pamuk's statement, I think he pointed out, is that the ability of Europe to integrate Turkey is whether it accepts what Turkey represents as part of what we are and what we want to be. And in that sense, I do think that Europeans, we do have a problem to accept Islam and the Islamic reference, or even the Ottoman past, as part of our identity. And even in the curriculums, in our schools, the Ottoman Empire is not taught as part of our identity as Europeans. It's like an empire in Europe, but not a European empire. So in that sense, I do think that there is, as Europeans, there is work to be done if this is to be a real couple and not just a one-night stand, to working in what we understand as European identity. If we look at the European integration process since the 50s, what we see is that first there was the reconciliation between Germans and French, and it brings us back to the Prussian-French wars. Then we have also the reconciliation after the Second World War, obviously, but we have the reconciliation after the Cold War between East and West Europe, where we get, when Eastern Europeans come back to home, in that sense. I think there is one missing element, which is European Islam or Ottoman Islam, and this is true not only for Turkey, but also for the Western Balkans. But I'm thinking big and I'm thinking long term. But I think that's a possibility. Now, certainly with the rise of Islamophobia in Europe and so on, it's much more difficult. But the moment in which Europe would understand that Islam is part of our identity and our history, it will be more digestible, because Turkey will not be seen that different for Turkey. Then the problem will be size, as Laura was mentioning, and wealth. Turkey is in terms of the economy, is growing, and we don't know how Turkey may look like in 2020. Perhaps the gap will not be that big. Certainly now Turkey is richer than Bulgaria. So something else is how well distributed wealth is. That's something else. And size, Laura was mentioning it. It's important, but also the EU was able to digest 12 countries so it's a matter of political willingness. And here the problem was how you accommodate the fact of having 12 new members in the table. That's difficult, but you manage to do. You may also be able to digest how to have one big member in the table. Luckily, Europe is so big that there's no country with the capacity to control everything. Not even Germany. They need to make pacts. They need the support of the Dutch, of the Swedes, of the Estonians. I mean, alone, no one can do everything. So if you by bringing a big country to the EU, it will not mean that Turkey will be able to rule Europe. What will mean is that probably, and it will be the small states that should be worried, that the trend will be for the big states to decide everything among themselves. So the Turks, the French, the Brits, and the Germans, in trying to think in scenarios. On the multi-speed, I think we are already in. I mean, Eurozone, Schengen, everything. And it's true that if Turkey were to join, they will be excluded also from parts because they want or because they are asked, but it will not be a full. So there are different degrees of membership in this moment. One of the things that may happen in the future as one of the scenarios is what may happen if we have the exit of the United Kingdom or a renegotiation of the membership of the United Kingdom in order to avoid them to leave. Would this new form of relation with the EU be applicable to others, Norway, the UK, in which both parts would feel more comfortable? That's something to be seen.
There are two parties who wish to define themselves as the representative of the Gezi movement. One is, I think, the closest one, in my opinion, is the HDP, Democratic Party of the People. It has been founded last year after the Gezi movement. They represent themselves as the symbol of the Gezi movement, but from the beginning, the core of the party was Kurdish movement. Okay, and last year, the two members of the Kurdish party just passed to the HDP. It's the word, became the member of the HDP, but then this year they just closed by their own decision the pro-Kurdish party, and all the MPs moved to the HDP. It's a discussion among the HDP members because nobody let them know that this all Kurdish MPs will join the HDP. Okay, now the group that I mentioned before, who visits Öcalan, are the MPs of HDP. So I believe they are the closest one to the Gezi, but do they represent the Gezi movement? We can discuss that. They just represent the one part, one side of that movement. Probably they represent, for example, who support the HDP. Kurds support the HDP because now they have the HDP is the main pro-Kurdish party in the parliament. They support it, but also they have some question marks. We also should underline that. On the other hand, a more liberal left wings supports HDP. But on the other hand, as my colleague mentioned, there is also a part of the Gezi movement, Kemalist nationalists. Their representative is the oldest party of the Turkey, CHP. It's the Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi, Republican People's Party. It's also another discussion because in the party itself, it's the main opponent party. In the party itself, there is a Kemalist division and a liberal division, and they are also they also compete with each other, but they also represent themselves as the party of the Gezi movement. There are parties that they see themselves as the representatives of the movement, but they are not fully represents the movement. The Gezi movement was a kind of a dream for all of us. I mean, we couldn't believe when it happened. Okay, I know myself. I was just I exactly remember the time. I followed the news that day, the first day that a few people protest the Gezi Park. And I talked with my friends that how long will it take? 1 day, 2 days, we'll see. Probably they will press it. But all the summer, and it still continues in a way. And for a scholar, it's hard for us because we always following the news and Twitter and Facebook because it goes on social media. Maybe not on the street no more, but on the social media. If there is a way to transform to Turkey on its way to the human rights and to democratization and minority rights, I believe it's the way of the Gezi movement. But on the other hand, I have question marks about CHP, and also I can express myself as I voted for HDP, but I also criticize them when they represent themselves as the Gezi movement.
Complementing Elçin's remarks on that, I think that the fact that Turkish voters, Turkish speakers, voters from Turkish families voted for the HDP and a Kurdish candidate, Selahattin Demirtas, and that the fact that this party, or what this party represents, moved from 6 to 9, almost 10% of the voters. This is a revolution.
It was a huge success.
Exactly, and this is, as I said, one of the effects of Gezi and of the transformation of Turkish political Turks voting for Kurds, for a Kurdish dominated party. This is a big transformation. The other, but still you may have this question. Okay, so if Gezi was so massive, and if Gezi was so cross-cutting with different people of the society, how can we, and then there are so many scandals around Erdogan, how do we, and even some of his supporters, like the Fethullahis, now are no longer supporting, how he makes it to win the elections? And here I think there's one easy answer, which is that the opposition is not very attractive. And here it's very interesting to look at the differences in the electoral behavior in the municipal elections, in the local elections, and the presidential elections. Probably the local elections reflect more the reality of the Turkish society, because also there were a higher turnout. Also, it was in March, not in August, when many people are on their holidays resorts, not the poor, but the rich in holidays resorts. But then what you have is that around 40-something% of the population, of the voters, voted for AKP. In the presidential elections, you have more than 50% voting for AKP. It means that some of the people that voted for alternative candidates to the municipal elections in March decided not to vote, and that's what happened. It's this 10% difference of participation. Why? Because first they thought that Erdogan was going to win, while, for instance, there were significant doubts about what would happen in Ankara and in Istanbul. It were a real election. People, their vote matter, and people here, there were many people that had the impression that the vote didn't matter, and the fact that they decided, the two main opposition parties, not the HDP, but the CHP and the nationalist, right-wing nationalist MHP, to go for a consensus candidate of both, which meant that it had to be a consensus candidate, so it meant that hardcore Kemalists and hardcore nationalists did not like that candidate. Probably if one of them would have gone to the second tour, then it would have been easier. So probably it was a good idea, but I don't know if it was the wrong candidate or at the end it was the wrong idea. So, but the thing is that probably it's not 50% of the population which are supporting Erdogan. It's a significant majority, more than 40% in any case. And then the second question is why this 40% is still trusting him. And this is one element. First, the Fethullahis, the Hizmet movement, is not as strong as we all thought. And in any case, it's very powerful, but it doesn't have the capacity to mobilize so many people in terms of votes. They are very influential, but they are few. And the second element is that Turks are, I would say, conservative and capitalists. And what their fear was to put this economic miracle at risk. So they are corrupt, yes, but we are growing. Look how the Greeks are. Do we want to replace this single party government by a coalition of parties which probably will not understand each other, and we don't know which kind of economic policies will they do. So the conservative voter, that which is not really mobilized, decided to go for stability and for continuation. There is corruption. Yes, we are used to live with that. When do Turks vote against corruption? When there is a big economic crisis. That's what happened in 2000, 2001. Should there be in the future an economic crisis? I hope not, but it may be. Then we'll see the effects of all these corruption scandals, not before. If we see now in Spain also the impact of the corruption scandals, it is also because it's coming together with a very big economic and social crisis.
But they don't know on what perspectives they can unite together. Okay? Yes, they are anti-AKP. Maybe not anti-AKP, anti-Erdogan. Okay? Not anti-AKP, anti-Erdogan. But as you mentioned, when it comes to the elections, they don't know about the future, and I believe the economic interest is the main signifier. I sometimes suspicious that many Kemalist investments also votes for the AKP when they are just speaking against the AKP in front of the media. So economy is the basic bloodline of the AKP now. Okay, it just gives blood to the AKP regime because they, as I mentioned at my presentation, when they first came to power, they promised that they will transform the Kemalist nation state economically, administratively, ideologically, and its identity. They will transform all of them. When you look at the position of Turkey now, they failed in many aspects. In foreign policy, in internal politics, but they continued in one dimension, economy. Sometimes President Erdogan makes some announcements against the foreign investors, and just right after that, the economy minister organized some conferences, some other steps taken, and okay, they take a relief, a deep breath, and it continues like that. Because of that, they kept him, the economy minister, in this new government, just to calm down the foreign investors. So I think it's, if the economy goes down, then the AKP will be in trouble. It may be a social democratic party, but now also in HDP, it's a question. You know, Selahattin Demirtas was a candidate for presidency of the HDP, and Eduardo is very right. Many people, many Turk supported him. But now, recently, there is a anti-Demirtas movement in Turkey against Demirtas, but not only from the government. There is a reaction against the government, but also nobody protects him in the Kurdish political movement because he was a rising actor in the Kurdish movement. So I believe HDP is a democratic party. It is trying to be a democratic party, and they will take more positive steps. But will it be the main social democratic party in Turkey? Maybe not in a short time. But it doesn't mean that I believe the CHP is the social democratic party of the Turkey. I don't believe that. But if we discuss the HDP, they have that potential, but they also have to take further steps towards that.
No, I cannot imagine in the near future the HDP replacing the CHP as the main party of the center left of Turkey. What I can imagine is the HDP, if no mistakes are made, becoming the third or the fourth big force in a different way as the Kurds have been. So, I mean, embracing, I mean, a more rainbow, almost catch-all party, but not to the capacity of getting more than 15% of the votes. Yet, should there be an economic crisis, we have seen how the political party system in Turkey can change in a year. I mean, which used to be the biggest political party, a Social Democrat Party by Bülent Ecevit, disappeared in the following elections after the 2000-2001 crisis, similar to what in Spain happened to the UCD. So these kind of things could happen. The whole political parties can collapse, and there could be new forms of political parties. Yet, also the GHP has been the most resilient in all these crises. So I don't expect the GHP to disappear anytime soon.
Acabeu de començar, si us puc, se'l